A broke single mother working two exhausting jobs and drowning in overdue bills finds a little boy crying alone in the snow outside a grocery store. She has every reason to walk away, but instead she chooses to help him get home. What she doesn't know is that the boy's father runs a major firm, and her simple act of kindness is about to open a door that will completely change her life. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us where you're watching from and drop your city in the comments below. The December wind cut through Evelyn's thin coat like a knife as she trudged through the fresh snow blanketing the parking lot. Her grocery bag felt impossibly light in her hands: a carton of eggs, a loaf of bread, a small container of milk, barely enough to last until her next paycheck on Friday. Her worn shoulder bag dug into her collarbone, heavy with overdue bills and final notices that seemed to multiply faster than she could count them. The neighborhood was eerily quiet, muffled by the thick blanket of snow that had fallen overnight. Even the usual traffic sounds seemed distant, absorbed by the white landscape. The streetlights cast yellow halos through the falling flakes, creating pools of amber light in the gathering dusk. Evelyn was exhausted down to her bones, juggling overnight shifts at the hospital laundry, afternoon cleaning jobs at the courthouse, and a car that was one cold morning away from dying completely. Yet she kept her focus ahead, surviving one day at a time, one step at a time. But then she saw him. A small figure hunched on a snow-dusted bench near the entrance to the grocery store, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. A little boy, no more than 7 years old, with pale skin reddened by the cold and sandy blonde hair poking out from under a navy blue knit cap. He wore a puffy winter jacket that looked too new and expensive for this rundown neighborhood, the kind with reflective strips and a designer logo. His small hands were tucked under his armpits, trying to warm them. This wasn't her concern. Evelyn had enough on her plate. Rent was 3 weeks overdue. The landlord had stopped being polite about it. The car was held together by prayers and duct tape, and her daughter Emma was counting on her to keep everything together. But something about the boy's trembling figure tugged at her, pulling at the small thread of humanity she still clung to in the midst of all her struggles. She paused for a moment, her feet frozen in place before a thought of Emma flashed in her mind. Her daughter was 9 now, growing up too fast in their cramped apartment with the flickering lights and the radiator that only worked half the time. If it were Emma sitting there, eyes swollen with fear, lost and alone in the snow, would she want a stranger to just walk by? Evelyn set down her grocery bag and crouched a few feet away, keeping her voice gentle. "Hey sweetheart, you okay?" The boy flinched, curling into himself, his wide eyes filled with wary confusion. Evelyn recognized that look. She'd seen it before, the cautious assessment, the instinctive wariness. Now it stared back at her from a child's frightened face. She maintained her distance, hands visible, tone soft. "I won't hurt you, honey. I promise. You look like you could use some help." He sniffled, his lower lip quivering. "I can't find my dad." Evelyn nodded, choosing her words with care. "Okay, we'll figure it out together." She pointed to the bench. "Want to sit for a minute, get out of the snow?" He hesitated, then nodded slowly, wiping his eyes with his mittened hands before sliding over to make room for her. Evelyn sat at the far end, giving him space as he tried to compose himself. Snow continued to fall around them, soft and steady. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Thomas," he whispered. "All right, Thomas, that's a good strong name. Do you know your daddy's phone number?" He nodded eagerly, rummaging in his jacket pocket to pull out a folded piece of paper. His fingers were clumsy with cold as he handed it to her. Evelyn took it gently, unfolding it to reveal a neatly written number and an address below in careful handwriting. She pulled out her phone with fingers that were going numb despite her thin gloves. The address wasn't far from here, maybe 15 minutes if the roads weren't too bad. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. She frowned, tried again. Still nothing. Beside her, Thomas twisted his hands together, his breath coming in shallow puffs of white vapor. Evelyn glanced between him and the paper. She should call the police, let them handle it. But the image of this boy alone in a station, terrified and waiting, twisted something in her gut. The address was only 15 minutes away, and the snow was getting heavier. "Okay," she said, standing and brushing snow off her coat. I'm going to take you home. All right. We'll find your daddy together. Thomas's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Evelyn knelt to his level, ignoring the cold wetness seeping through her worn jeans. I get it. You don't know me, and that's smart. You don't have to come with me. We can wait for the police if that feels safer, or you can see my car first. Make sure you feel okay about it. Your choice, sweetheart. He bit his lip, thinking. After a long pause, he whispered, Okay, I want to find my dad. As they walked to her car, Evelyn made sure he could see everything clearly. She opened the back door first, showed him the car seat that Emma used when she could afford to keep the car running. You can buckle up back here, and I'll turn the heat on. You must be freezing. Thomas climbed in carefully, and Evelyn watched as he fastened his seatbelt with shaking fingers. In the rear-view mirror, once she'd started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, she saw him clutching the paper like a lifeline, his eyes wide as he watched the snowy streets pass by. It reminded her of Emma's hopeful eyes that morning, dreaming about having a bigger place to live, maybe with a little yard where they could build a snowman. Dreams Evelyn couldn't afford amid the flickering lights and mounting bills of their cramped two-room apartment. But if it were Emma lost like this, she'd want someone to step up. You're nice, Thomas said quietly, gazing out the window at the snow-covered houses. Evelyn let out a hollow laugh, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. You don't even know me, kid. He shrugged, his reflection small in the mirror. You didn't leave me. Those words squeezed her heart. Not just because he was lost, but because of the trust in his voice, as if she could fix it all. How could she when she could barely scrape together rent money? When she'd skipped lunch for the past week to make sure Emma had enough to eat. The drive was mostly silent, except for the engine's weary hum, the swish of wipers clearing snow, and Thomas's occasional sniffles. Evelyn gripped the wheel tightly, her mind spinning through what might await. Maybe his father was out searching, frantic, or maybe it was something worse. She hated the unknown. Is my dad going to be mad? Thomas asked, his voice small and worried. She glanced back in the mirror, seeing his anxious face. I don't think so, honey. He's probably just worried sick about you. I didn't mean to get lost, he murmured. We were at the store and I thought he was right behind me, but then he wasn't. I know, it happens. You didn't do anything wrong. The address led them to a neighborhood that existed in a different world from hers. Tree-lined streets where the snow looked pristine and beautiful instead of dirty and treacherous. Manicured lawns with elaborate holiday decorations, inflatable snowmen, and light-up reindeer and icicle lights dripping from gutters. Grand two-story houses with three-car garages and expensive vehicles parked in circular driveways. Her rusty sedan, with its duct-taped bumper and mismatched tires, stood out like a sore thumb. As they pulled up to the address, Evelyn exhaled slowly, steeling herself. This simple act of kindness was pulling her into unfamiliar territory. She could feel it in her bones, that sense of not belonging that she'd carried her whole life. But she couldn't turn back now. Not for Thomas, not for Emma, not for the part of her that refused to walk away when someone needed help. She slowed in front of a beautiful two-story colonial, with white columns and a stone pathway that had already been cleared of snow, leading to a front door framed by elegant wreaths. Before she could even shift into park, that front door flew open. A man burst out onto the porch, not even pausing to grab a coat. He looked to be in his late 30s, with sandy brown hair and a dress shirt half untucked from his slacks, his face pale with panic. "Thomas," he shouted, his voice cracking. Thomas gasped, his small fingers fumbling with the seatbelt as he scrambled to unbuckle himself. Evelyn barely had time to put the car in park before the boy flung the door open and ran through the snow toward his father. The man, his father, fell to his knees right there in the snow, arms wide, catching Thomas in a tight embrace. "Oh my God, buddy," he choked, his voice shaking. "I was so scared. I've been calling the police, I've been driving around. I couldn't find you, Daddy." Thomas clung to him, his small frame trembling. The man pulled back just enough to cup his son's face, his hands shaking as he checked him over. "Are you hurt? Are you okay? What happened?" "I got lost at the store, but she found me." Thomas pointed back at Evelyn's car. The man's gaze locked onto Evelyn, and for a second something flashed across his face. Relief, confusion, then something harder, something wary. Evelyn saw it clearly, a wealthy man in an expensive neighborhood, looking at a stranger in a beat-up car, trying to calculate whether she was help or threat. She'd seen that look before, in stores where security followed her, in office buildings where she came to clean after everyone else had gone home. He stood slowly, keeping one arm wrapped around Thomas as he took a hesitant step forward. Evelyn stayed by her car, giving him space, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. She wasn't about to let this man make her feel like she'd done something wrong, but she also understood the fear of a parent who'd just gotten their child back. "I found him outside Miller's grocery store," she said, her voice even and clear. "He was crying on a bench. He had this." She pulled the paper from her pocket and held it out, not stepping closer, letting him come to her. "I tried calling, no answer, so I brought him home." The man hesitated before reaching for the paper, his fingers brushing against hers as he took it. He glanced down, then back up at her, his jaw tightening. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his free hand over his face. "I didn't even realize he was gone until I got home and started unloading groceries. I thought he was right behind me in the store. I must have lost track of him in the checkout line." His voice wavered. "I got home, and he wasn't in the car, and I panicked." For the first time, Evelyn saw past the guarded expression. He was shaken, guilt settling into the lines of his face, the reality of what could have happened hitting him. "It happens," Evelyn said, though she wasn't sure why she felt the need to reassure him. Maybe because she knew what it was like to feel like you'd failed your kid, even when you were doing your best. He swallowed hard, glancing down at Thomas, then back at her. "Thank you," he said, the words slower this time, more careful. "Really. I don't know what I would have done if—" He stopped himself, shaking his head. Evelyn nodded once. "He's safe, that's what matters." She turned slightly, ready to head back to her car, to get back to her own life and her own problems. But Thomas's small voice stopped her. "Miss Evelyn." She looked back at him. The little boy hesitated, then took a step toward her, his mittened fingers reaching out. "Thank you for not leaving me." Something in her chest twisted painfully. Evelyn crouched down, snow soaking into her jeans again, leveling her gaze with his. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Thomas suddenly stepped forward, and wrapped his arms around her neck in a quick but fierce hug. It caught her completely off guard, the simple warmth of it, the trust. Before she could react properly, he pulled away and ran back to his father's side. The man watched them, something unreadable in his expression now. Then he shifted, standing straighter, and extended his hand. "I'm Robert Mitchell." Evelyn stood, shaking his hand briefly. "Evelyn Sullivan." Robert nodded slowly, like he was committing it to memory. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet, extracting a business card. "If there's anything I can ever do to repay you, I mean that, anything." He paused, then added carefully, "I run an accounting firm downtown, Mitchell Financial Services. If you're ever looking for work, or know someone who is, please don't hesitate to call." Evelyn took the card, surprised. "I appreciate that." "I mean it," Robert said. "What you did today, bringing Thomas home safely when you didn't have to, that shows character. Good judgment. Those are qualities I value." Evelyn nodded, pocketing the card without really thinking about it. She was too cold, too tired, and too aware of the groceries still sitting in her front seat getting warm. "Take care of him," she said simply, then headed back to her car. As she drove away, she could see Robert and Thomas in her rearview mirror, standing in the snow watching her go. Evelyn drove home in silence, her mind spinning. The business card sat on her dashboard, reflecting the dim light from the street lamps. Mitchell Financial Services. She'd heard of them, one of the mid-sized firms in the city, with a solid reputation. By the time she pulled into her usual spot outside her apartment building, the snow had turned to sleet, tapping against her windshield like impatient fingers. She sat there for a long moment, engine running to keep the heat going, staring at that card. 10 years ago, fresh out of community college with a business degree and stars in her eyes, Evelyn had dreamed of becoming an accountant. She'd loved numbers, loved the way everything balanced out when you did it right, loved the puzzle of making the books work. She'd done well in school, maintained a 3.8 grade average while working full-time at a diner, raising Emma as a single mother. But the corporate world had chewed her up and spit her out before she'd even gotten started. Interview after interview, where she could see them dismissing her the moment she walked in, her clothes from the thrift store, her resume with no family connections, her address in the wrong part of town. The few jobs she did land were entry-level data entry positions that paid barely more than minimum wage and went nowhere. When one company downsized, and she was the first one let go, she'd given up. Now she scraped by doing whatever work she could find. The hospital laundry paid $11 an hour for overnight shifts that started at 11 at night and ended at 7 in the morning. The courthouse cleaning job paid $13 for afternoons, from 2 to 6. Between the two jobs, she managed maybe 5 hours of sleep on a good day. Neither offered benefits. Neither offered a future. She was 3 weeks behind on rent. The landlord had made it clear that one more missed payment, and she and Emma would be out. The car needed new tires, and probably a new transmission soon. Emma needed new winter boots. Her current ones had holes in the soles that Evelyn had tried to patch with cardboard. Evelyn grabbed the grocery bag, and her person headed inside, trying to push the card out of her mind. She had Emma to pick up from her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson's apartment in an hour. Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher, watched Emma after school for $20 a week, which was all Evelyn could afford. Then there was dinner to figure out from nearly nothing, homework to help with, and another overnight shift starting at 11. The next morning, Thursday, December 17th, Evelyn was getting ready for her afternoon courthouse shift when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Sullivan. This is Robert Mitchell. I hope you don't mind me calling directly. Evelyn's grip tightened on the phone. How did you get my number? It was on the paper Thomas had. You'd written it on there, in case he needed to reach you. I apologize if that feels intrusive. He paused. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. I meant what I said about being grateful, and about my offer. Mr. Mitchell, I appreciate the card, but I'm sure you were just being polite. I wasn't, he interrupted gently. Miss Sullivan, can I be completely honest with you? I suppose. After you left yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about how you handled the situation. The way you approached Thomas carefully, gave him choices, made him feel safe. The way you tried calling me before making any decisions, that shows exceptional judgment and character. He paused. So I looked you up. I hope that doesn't upset you, but I wanted to know more about the person who helped my son. Evelyn's blood ran cold. You investigated me. Not investigated, just a basic online search. Public records, and what I found was that you graduated with honors from Riverside Community College 10 years ago, with a degree in business administration, concentration in accounting. You completed advanced coursework in tax preparation and financial analysis. He paused. Miss Sullivan, you're qualified for work far beyond what you're currently doing. She was silent, her heart pounding, feeling exposed and vulnerable. I know this is forward of me, Robert continued, and I apologize if I've overstepped. But I also know that sometimes talented people fall through the cracks of the system, through no fault of their own. And I believe in second chances. Why? The word came out harsh. Why would you do this for a complete stranger? Robert was quiet for a long moment. 10 years ago, my firm was smaller. We had a brilliant young accountant named Patricia Anderson. She came from a background similar to yours, worked her way through school, no connections, just raw talent and determination. Some of the senior partners made her life difficult. They questioned her work constantly, passed her over for promotions, made subtle comments about whether she fit with the firm's image. His voice grew quieter. She left after 2 years, completely burned out. Last I heard, she was managing a retail store, wasting her talent. I didn't fight for her the way I should have. I've regretted it ever since. Evelyn closed her eyes, understanding washing over her. I can't change what happened to Patricia, Robert said, but I can offer you an opportunity if you're interested. No strings attached, no obligation. Just a chance to use the degree you worked so hard for. Mr. Mitchell, I don't have recent references, not the kind you'd need for an accounting position. I don't need references from people who didn't deserve your talent in the first place. What I need is someone who can analyze financial statements, reconcile accounts, prepare tax documents, and work with attention to detail. Based on your transcript, which I was able to access through the college's alumni records with your permission, I'm sorry, I should have asked first. You excelled at all of those things. Evelyn looked around her tiny apartment, at the bills spread across the table, at the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord refused to fix, at Emma's worn coat hanging by the door. I have a daughter. I work nights and afternoons because those are the only shifts I can get. I can't afford to take risks on something that might not work out. Then don't think of it as a risk. Think of it as a job. A real job with regular daytime hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Starting salary is $42,000 a year. Health benefits from day one, including dental and vision, 2 weeks paid vacation, sick leave. He paused, and if you prove yourself, which I believe you will, there's a clear path to senior positions and eventually management. $42,000 a year. Evelyn did the quick math in her head. That was nearly double what she made now, working 2 jobs and destroying her health in the process. That was rent paid on time, groceries without counting every penny, new boots for Emma, maybe even fixing the car properly. But it also sounded too good to be true. Mr. Mitchell, I need to be honest with you. I appreciate this more than you know, but I'm suspicious. In my experience, when something sounds this good, there's usually a catch. I understand completely, Robert said, and you're right to be cautious. The catch, if you want to call it that, is that you'll be starting at the bottom as a junior accountant. You'll have to prove yourself just like anyone else. I'm not offering you charity or special treatment, just a fair shot. What you do with that opportunity is entirely up to you. Evelyn took a deep breath. Can I think about it? Of course, take your time. But Miss Sullivan, I'm going to be honest with you about something else. I need someone to start soon. We're heading into tax season, and we're understaffed. If you're interested, I'd need an answer by Monday, December 20th, and if you decide yes, I'd need you to start on Monday, January 3rd, right after the new year. That's less than 3 weeks away. I know, it's a lot to ask, but I also think you're ready for this, even if you don't believe it yet. After she hung up, Evelyn sat in silence for a long time, staring at the business card she'd propped up on her kitchen table. Maybe this was foolish. Maybe she was setting herself up for another heartbreak. But maybe, just maybe, this was the door she'd been waiting for. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Evelyn pulled out her old textbooks from community college. She'd kept them, unable to throw them away, even when she'd given up hope of ever using them again. She stayed up until 2 in the morning, reviewing balance sheets, income statements, tax code basics, her fingers trembling as she turned the pages. She called Robert on Friday morning, December 18th. I'll take the job, she said. Thank you for the opportunity. No, Robert said quietly. Thank you for taking a chance. I'll have HR send over the paperwork today. Welcome to Mitchell Financial Services, Evelyn. The next 2 weeks passed, in a blur of preparation. Evelyn gave notice at both her jobs. The hospital laundry supervisor seemed genuinely sorry to see her go, while the courthouse cleaning company barely acknowledged her resignation. She went to the thrift store and carefully selected 3 professional outfits, spending money she couldn't really afford, but knowing she needed to look the part. She spent every spare moment reviewing her old textbooks, refamiliarizing herself with accounting principles she hadn't used in a decade. Emma noticed the change in her mother's energy. Mama, you seem different, happy different. Evelyn pulled her daughter onto her lap. I got a new job, baby. A real job. In an office with a desk and a computer and everything. Emma's eyes went wide. Like the people on TV. Just like that. Does that mean we don't have to worry so much anymore? Evelyn's throat tightened. She kissed her daughter's forehead. It means things are going to get better, sweetheart. I promise. Christmas came and went quietly. Evelyn couldn't afford much, but she managed to get Emma a few small gifts and a warm winter coat from the clearance rack. They spent Christmas Day building a snowman in the apartment complex courtyard, and for the first time in years Evelyn felt hopeful about the future. Monday, January 3rd arrived with clear skies and bitter cold. Evelyn stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning, adjusting the collar of her thrift store blouse, her hands shaking slightly. She looked different, more professional, but she still felt like herself, a woman from the wrong side of town trying to fit into a world that had never wanted her. "You look beautiful, Mama," Emma said from the doorway, already dressed for school. "Thank you, baby. Are you scared?" Evelyn considered lying, then decided against it. "A little bit, but sometimes we have to do things that scare us." "You're the bravest person I know," Emma said seriously. Evelyn hugged her daughter tight, drawing strength from her. The office building was downtown, all glass and steel and marble floors. Evelyn took the elevator to the 7th floor, clutching her bag, trying to steady her breathing. She was 30 minutes early. She'd taken the bus to make sure she wouldn't be late, even though it meant leaving Emma with Mrs. Patterson earlier than usual. The receptionist, a friendly woman named Alice, greeted her warmly and directed her to Robert's office. He was already there, reviewing some documents, but he stood immediately when she entered. "Evelyn, welcome. How are you feeling?" "Nervous," she admitted. "That's completely normal. Come on, I'll show you around and introduce you to the team." He walked her through the office, introducing her to people whose names blurred together in her nervousness. There was Sharon Bradley, a senior accountant in her 50s with kind eyes who would be training her. Daniel Harper, an intense-looking man in his early 30s who barely acknowledged the introduction. Jennifer Lawson, polished and professional with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Several others whose faces and names Evelyn tried desperately to remember. Finally, Robert showed her to a small cubicle with a computer, a phone, and a nameplate that read Evelyn Sullivan, Junior Accountant. "This is your space," he said. "Your first assignment is to reconcile these client accounts." He placed a stack of files on her desk. "Sharon will walk you through our system and processes. Take your time, be thorough. If you have questions, Sharon is right next door and she's excellent." Evelyn spent the first day feeling like she was underwater, trying to remember everything she'd learned a decade ago, trying not to make mistakes. But slowly it came back to her. The logic of it, the satisfaction of making the numbers line up correctly, of catching discrepancies and figuring out where they came from. Sharon was patient and helpful, explaining the firm's procedures without making Evelyn feel incompetent. "Don't worry about being perfect on day one," she said kindly during lunch break. "It takes time to get up to speed. You're doing fine, I hope so. I can't afford to mess this up." Sharon gave her a knowing look. "Robert told me a bit about your situation. Not details, just that you're getting a second chance at something. For what it's worth, I think you're going to do well here. You ask good questions, and you're not afraid to admit when you don't know something. Those are important qualities." By the end of the first week, Evelyn had found her rhythm. The work was challenging but not impossible. Her old skills were coming back, rusty but still there. And for the first time in years, she felt like she was using her brain for something more than just survival. She was also exhausted in a different way than before. Instead of being physically drained from overnight shifts and cleaning work, she was mentally tired from concentrating all day. But it was a good tired, a productive tired. The first paycheck arrived 2 weeks later, on Friday, January 14th. Evelyn opened the envelope in her car during lunch break and stared at the number. After taxes and insurance, it was still more money than she'd made in a month at her previous jobs combined. She cried right there in the parking lot, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her face. That afternoon, she paid the back rent in full. The landlord seemed shocked to receive cash for all 3 overdue months plus the current month. "You hit the lottery or something?" he asked suspiciously. "Got a new job," Evelyn said simply. That weekend she took Emma shopping. Real shopping, not just looking at clearance racks and hoping. New winter boots with good soles, warm socks, a few new outfits for school. They even stopped for ice cream afterward, a small luxury they hadn't been able to afford in months. "Is this really happening?" Emma asked, her face chocolate smeared and happy. "Are things really getting better?" "Yes, baby," Evelyn said, her heart full. "Things are really getting better." But not everyone at the firm was as welcoming as Sharon and Robert. Daniel Harper had been with Mitchell Financial Services for 7 years. He'd started as a junior accountant just like Evelyn and had worked his way up to senior accountant. He'd expected to be promoted to senior manager by now. But Robert had been holding off, saying Daniel needed to develop better leadership skills and client relationships. The arrival of Evelyn seemed to irritate him from the start. It started with small things. He would walk past her cubicle and glance at her work, making comments just loud enough for her to hear. Interesting approach to that reconciliation. Not how I would have done it. Or make sure you're using the current tax tables, not last year's. Evelyn ignored it at first, focusing on her work and trying to prove herself through results. Jennifer Lawson was subtler but no less pointed. She made comments about Evelyn's clothes. "Oh, I love how you mix and match pieces, so practical." About her lunch, "Homemade sandwiches are so much healthier than going out. Good for you." About her background, "It must be so refreshing to work in an office after doing manual labor." Each comment, taken alone, could be dismissed as harmless or even well-intentioned. But together they created a constant reminder that Evelyn was different, that she didn't quite belong. Sharon noticed and pulled Evelyn aside one day in late January. "Don't let them get to you. Daniel does this to anyone he perceives as competition, and Jennifer follows his lead. They're insecure." "I'm just trying to do my job," Evelyn said. "I know, and you're doing it well. Better than well, actually." Roberts noticed, and that's what matters. Evelyn kept her head down and worked harder than anyone. She arrived at 7:45 every morning, a full 15 minutes before the official start time. She used her lunch break to review tax code updates and industry publications. She stayed until 5:15 most days, making sure everything was completed properly. She volunteered for the assignments others didn't want. The complicated estate returns, the small business accounts with messy bookkeeping, the clients who called with endless questions. Slowly, grudgingly, respect began to replace skepticism for most of her coworkers. They saw that she wasn't just competent but genuinely good at what she did. She caught errors that others missed. She explained complex tax situations to clients in ways they could understand. She worked efficiently without cutting corners. By early March, 3 months into the job, Evelyn had become a reliable member of the team. Several clients had specifically requested to work with her again, praising her thoroughness and patience. That's when Robert assigned her to the Anderson Manufacturing account. Anderson Manufacturing was one of the firm's largest clients, a mid-sized company with complex inventory systems, multiple locations, and intricate depreciation schedules for their equipment. The account had been handled by senior accountants for years. "I want you to take the lead on their quarterly review," Robert told Evelyn in early March. "Sharon will supervise and be available for questions, but this is your project." Evelyn felt both honored and terrified. "Are you sure? This is a major account." "I'm sure. You've proven yourself over the past 3 months. This is the next step." She threw herself into the project completely. She spent weeks analyzing Anderson's financial statements, building detailed spreadsheets, tracing every transaction, verifying every calculation. She met with the client's CFO twice to clarify their accounting practices and inventory methods. Late one Thursday evening in mid-March, Evelyn was still at the office, triple-checking her depreciation calculations. Most of the staff had left for the day. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice Daniel approach her cubicle. "Working late," he said, making her jump. "Just finishing up the Anderson review. Mind if I take a look? I've handled that account before. Might catch something you missed." Evelyn hesitated. His tone was friendly enough, but something felt off. Still, she couldn't refuse without seeming defensive. "Sure, I'd appreciate a second set of eyes." She sent him her working files and went back to her analysis. The next morning, Friday, March 18th, the team gathered for a review meeting before presenting the quarterly results to Anderson's executives. Evelyn had prepared a comprehensive presentation showing her findings, including several areas where Anderson could optimize their tax position. She was halfway through her presentation when Daniel interrupted. "I reviewed Evelyn's work last night, and I have some concerns about the depreciation calculations." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What concerns?" "You used the declining balance method for their manufacturing equipment, but I believe they're supposed to be using straight-line depreciation for most of their assets. The difference could be significant. Evelyn felt heat rising in her face, but she kept her voice steady. The client's CFO confirmed they used declining balance for all equipment purchased after 2020. It's documented in the notes from my meeting with him. She pulled up her meeting notes on the screen. See? Right here. Daniel frowned. That doesn't match what I remember from when I handled this account 2 years ago. Sharon spoke up. Tax laws changed in 2021. Declining balance became more advantageous for their type of equipment. Evelyn's calculation is correct, based on current regulations. Are you sure? Daniel pressed, because if we're wrong about this, it could create serious problems for the client. Robert intervened. Evelyn, can you walk us through your methodology step by step? She did, explaining each decision, showing her supporting documentation, referencing the specific tax code sections that applied. By the time she finished, it was clear to everyone in the room that her work was not only correct but exceptionally thorough. Well done, Robert said. This is excellent work, Evelyn. Daniel, I appreciate you double-checking, but everything appears to be in order. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The presentation to Anderson Manufacturing went perfectly. The CFO was impressed with Evelyn's analysis and implemented several of her tax optimization recommendations immediately. He called Robert the next week to specifically compliment Evelyn's work and request that she continue handling their account. It should have been a triumph. And it was professionally. But Evelyn noticed that Daniel's attitude toward her grew colder after that meeting. He stopped even pretending to be friendly. April brought tax season in full force, the busiest and most stressful time of year for any accounting firm. Everyone was working long hours, handling the flood of individual and business returns that had to be filed by the April 15th deadline. Evelyn was assigned to prepare returns for about 20 small business clients. She worked methodically, carefully reviewing each return multiple times before filing. The work was tedious and exhausting, but she was determined not to make any mistakes during her first tax season at the firm. Emma was staying with Mrs. Patterson more often now, sometimes having dinner there so Evelyn could work late. Evelyn hated missing time with her daughter, but Mrs. Patterson was understanding and only charged an extra $5 per evening meal. You're building something for both of you, she told Evelyn. Emma understands that. On Thursday, April 7th, Evelyn was working late again, finishing up returns for 2 of her business clients. She carefully reviewed everything one final time, all the deductions properly documented, all the forms correctly filled out, all the calculations double-checked. She printed the final versions, signed them, and left them in the designated filing tray on her desk for the administrative staff to process in the morning. She left the office at 9:30 that night, exhausted but satisfied with a good day's work. When she arrived Friday morning at 7:45, she went straight to her desk to make sure the returns had been processed. But when she looked at the papers in her tray, her blood ran cold. The numbers were wrong, deductions had been changed, forms had been altered. These weren't the returns she'd prepared last night. Her hands shook as she went through them page by page. Someone had taken her completed returns and made changes that would have triggered audits, that would have cost her clients money, that would have made her look incompetent or worse. She immediately pulled up her electronic files. The digital versions were exactly as she'd left them, properly completed and accurate. Someone had only altered the physical printed copies. Evelyn's first instinct was panic, but she forced herself to think clearly. She saved copies of all her digital files to a backup drive, documented the discrepancies between her original files and the altered physical copies, and checked the timestamps on everything. Then she went to Sharon's cubicle. The senior accountant wasn't in yet, it was still early, but Evelyn left her a note asking her to come see her as soon as she arrived. Sharon appeared 20 minutes later, took one look at Evelyn's face, and closed the cubicle entrance. "What's wrong?" Evelyn explained, showing her the altered returns and the original digital files. Sharon's expression grew serious. "This isn't a mistake, someone deliberately changed these." "I know, but who, and why? The better question is, what do we do about it? We need to tell Robert immediately." They went to Robert's office together. He listened carefully, his jaw tightening as Evelyn explained what had happened. "Do you know who had access to your desk last night?" he asked. "Anyone who stayed late? The office isn't locked until the cleaning crew finishes around 11. Robert picked up his phone. "Alice, can you pull the building access logs for last night? I need to know everyone who badged in after 7 p.m. on the 7th floor. 10 minutes later, they had the answer. 4 people had been in the office after Evelyn left: Daniel Harper, Jennifer Lawson, a junior accountant named Kevin Brooks, and Robert himself, who'd come back at 10 to retrieve some files he'd forgotten." Robert's expression was grim. "I'm going to review the security camera footage. Evelyn, I want you to file the correct versions of these returns from your digital files. Sharon, can you stay with her and witness the filing process? I want a clear record of exactly what was submitted." By lunchtime, Robert had his answer. The security footage showed Daniel entering Evelyn's cubicle at 10:15 p.m., spending approximately 8 minutes at her desk and leaving with what appeared to be papers in his hand. Robert called an immediate meeting with Daniel, HR Director Patricia Thompson, and the firm's attorney. Evelyn wasn't present for that meeting, but Sharon filled her in later. Daniel had initially tried to deny it, then claimed he was just reviewing her work to make sure it was correct. But when confronted with the fact that he'd made actual changes to completed returns, changes that were wrong and would have caused problems, he'd become defensive. "I was trying to catch her mistakes before the client saw them," he'd said. "But you created mistakes that didn't exist," Robert had replied. "And you did it without her knowledge or consent, altering work that she'd already completed and signed. That's not reviewing, that's sabotage." Daniel was fired that afternoon. Not just for this incident, but because when HR investigated further, they found he'd been undermining other junior accountants as well, though in more subtle ways. He'd been creating a toxic environment for anyone he perceived as threatening his position. Jennifer received a formal written warning for her role in fostering a hostile atmosphere, though there was no evidence she'd been involved in the actual sabotage. Robert addressed the entire accounting team the next morning. "I want to be absolutely clear about something. This firm has zero tolerance for sabotage, discrimination, or harassment of any kind. We succeed by working together, not by tearing each other down. Evelyn Sullivan has consistently produced excellent work and has earned her place on this team. Anyone who has a problem with that should start looking for employment elsewhere." The room was silent. "I also want to remind everyone that we have formal channels for raising concerns about someone's work. If you genuinely believe a colleague has made an error, you bring it to their attention or to a supervisor. You don't secretly alter their completed work. Is that clear?" Everyone nodded. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in the office changed noticeably. Colleagues who'd been cool toward Evelyn began to warm up. People started seeking out her expertise on complex issues. During a particularly difficult estate tax return, even Kevin Brooks, who'd barely spoken to her before, asked for her help with an unusual situation. She wasn't just accepted now, she was respected. Tax season ended on April 15th. The entire office breathed a collective sigh of relief as they filed the last returns and began catching up on sleep. Evelyn had survived her first tax season at Mitchell Financial Services. Not only survived, she'd excelled. Every single one of her returns had been filed correctly and on time. Several clients had specifically complimented her work, and she'd proven beyond any doubt that she belonged. In early May, Robert called her into his office. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "That was an intense few months. Tired but good, really good actually. You should be proud. You did excellent work under difficult circumstances." He paused. "I want to talk to you about your future here." Evelyn's heart beat faster. "You've exceeded every expectation I had," Robert continued. "Your work is consistently excellent, your clients trust you, and you've shown the kind of judgment and integrity that makes for strong leadership. I'm offering you a promotion to senior accountant effective June 1st. Evelyn felt tears spring to her eyes. "I don't know what to say. The promotion comes with a salary increase to $50,000 a year. You'll have your own office instead of a cubicle, and you'll supervise one of the new junior accountants we're bringing on this summer." "An office supervising someone," Robert smiled. "You've earned it. You've been here less than 6 months, but you've proven yourself more than some people do in years. The question is, are you ready for it?" Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, sitting on that worn couch in her cramped apartment, wondering how she'd make rent, wondering if she'd ever be anything more than someone who scraped by doing whatever work she could find. That woman had been so tired, so scared, so certain that no matter how hard she worked, she'd never get ahead. But that woman had also been strong enough to help a lost little boy when she had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Strong enough to take a chance when opportunity knocked. Strong enough to keep fighting when people tried to tear her down. "Yeah," Evelyn said, meeting Robert's eyes. "I'm ready." The promotion took effect on June 1st. Evelyn moved into a small office with a window overlooking downtown. It wasn't large or fancy, but it was hers. The nameplate on the door read Evelyn Sullivan, Senior Accountant. She supervised a young junior accountant named Rebecca Davis, fresh out of college with a business degree and nervous energy that reminded Evelyn of herself. Evelyn mentored her with patience and encouragement, remembering what it felt like to be new and uncertain. "You're going to make mistakes," she told Rebecca on her first day. "Everyone does. The important thing is to learn from them and ask questions when you're not sure. I'd rather you ask me the same question 5 times than make an assumption that turns out to be wrong." "Thank you," Rebecca said, visibly relieved. "Everyone else here seems so confident and polished. I wasn't sure I'd fit in." "Neither was I," Evelyn said, with a smile. "But you will. Just work hard and don't let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve to be here." Summer passed in a blur of client meetings and project work. Evelyn thrived in her new role. She discovered she had a talent for explaining complex tax issues to clients in ways they could understand, for finding solutions to unusual financial situations, for seeing the big picture while still attending to important details. By August, she and Emma had moved into a better apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was in a safer neighborhood with good schools. It had 2 bedrooms, so Emma finally had her own room. The kitchen appliances all worked. The heat was reliable. There was even a small community pool where Emma took swimming lessons that summer. Emma was thriving. Her grades had improved dramatically now that Evelyn had regular hours and could help with homework, now that they weren't constantly stressed about money. She joined the school art club and talked excitedly about her friends and her teachers. "Mama, Mrs. Anderson says I'm really good at drawing," Emma said one evening in late August, showing off a sketch she'd done of their new apartment building. "She says I have natural talent." Evelyn looked at the drawing, surprisingly detailed and well-proportioned for a 9-year-old. "You do have talent, baby. That's beautiful. Do you think maybe someday I could take real art classes, like at a studio?" 6 months ago, Evelyn would have had to gently explain that they couldn't afford it. "Now," she said, "I think we can make that happen. Let's look into it." The look of pure joy on Emma's face made every late night, every difficult client, every moment of doubt worth it. December arrived with the first heavy snowfall of the season, transforming the city into a winter wonderland. Evelyn stood at her office window, watching the flakes fall, thinking about how much had changed in exactly 1 year. Her phone rang. "Robert, can you come to the conference room? There's someone here who wants to see you." Curious, Evelyn made her way down the hall. When she entered the conference room, she found Robert standing with Thomas and a well-dressed woman she recognized from the photo on Robert's desk, his wife, Catherine. "Miss Evelyn." Thomas ran to her, throwing his arms around her waist. He'd grown in the past year, taller and more confident, his face brighter. "Hi, sweetheart," Evelyn said, genuinely delighted. "Look at you, you've grown so much." "I'm 8 now," he announced proudly. "My birthday was in October." "We're sorry to interrupt your workday," Catherine said, stepping forward with a warm smile. "I'm Catherine Mitchell. I was traveling for work last December when Thomas got lost. I never got to meet you or thank you properly." "There's nothing to thank me for. I just did what anyone would do, but not everyone would," Catherine said firmly, her eyes serious. "And Robert and I have been discussing how to properly express our gratitude for what you did." Robert cleared his throat. "Evelyn, over the past year, Catherine and I have had many conversations about second chances and the power of kindness. About how one person's decision to help can change the trajectory of someone's entire life." Evelyn felt a flutter of nervousness. "I'm not sure what you mean." "What we mean," Catherine said, "is that we want to establish a scholarship fund. For students from challenging backgrounds who want to pursue business or accounting degrees but don't have the resources or connections to make it happen easily. Robert nodded. We've been working with several other donors, people I've met through the firm who believe in this cause. The fund will provide full tuition, books, and a living stipend for students attending community college or university. We're planning to support at least 2 students per year to start, with hopes to expand as the fund grows. That's wonderful, Evelyn said, moved by the idea. What can I do to help? Robert and Catherine exchanged a glance. We'd like to name it the Sullivan Scholarship Fund, Catherine said. If you'll allow us to use your name. Evelyn felt tears spring to her eyes. That's too much. I don't deserve. You absolutely do, Robert interrupted gently. You gave us back our son. You changed your own life through sheer determination and hard work despite facing obstacles that would have stopped most people. You're exactly the kind of example we want these students to see, proof that with opportunity and perseverance, it's possible to build a better future. The first scholarships will be awarded next fall, Catherine added. We've already raised enough for 3 full scholarships in the first year, and we're asking if you'd be willing to serve on the selection committee to help identify students who remind you of yourself, students with potential who just need a fair chance. Evelyn couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the generosity and thoughtfulness of the gesture. Then Thomas tugged on her hand. Miss Evelyn, are you crying because you're happy? She laughed through her tears, crouching down to his level. Yes, sweetheart. Very happy. Good. Dad says you helped me when I was lost, and now you help lots of people with their money and taxes, and now this scholarship will help even more people go to school. That's a lot of helping. Evelyn pulled him into a hug. You know what? You're absolutely right. That is a lot of helping. After they left, Evelyn sat in her office for a long time, looking out at the snow falling on the city below. She thought about the moment exactly 1 year ago when she'd almost walked past Thomas, almost convinced herself that helping him wasn't her responsibility, that she had too much on her plate already. What would her life look like now if she'd made that choice? Would she still be working overnight shifts and cleaning offices, still 3 weeks behind on rent, still watching Emma's dreams fade because Evelyn couldn't afford to nurture them? She'd never know, and she was profoundly grateful for that. That evening, as Evelyn drove home through the snow, in a reliable car that she'd been able to purchase used but in good condition over the summer, to a warm apartment in a safe neighborhood, to a daughter who was thriving, she thought about kindness and second chances and the unpredictable ways that life can change. When she pulled into her parking spot, Emma was watching for her from the window, like she always did. Evelyn grabbed her bag and the small package she'd picked up during lunch. New art supplies for Emma, good quality ones from the actual art store, not just the cheap set from the discount shop. Mama, Emma threw her arms around her as soon as she walked in. Mrs. Anderson gave me an A+ on my art project. She said it's good enough to enter in the district art competition. That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you. As they settled in for the evening, Emma working on homework at the kitchen table while Evelyn prepared dinner, both of them warm and fed and safe. Evelyn felt a contentment she'd never known before. It hadn't been easy. The past year had been filled with challenges, with moments of doubt, with people who tried to undermine her. But she'd persevered, she'd proven herself, and in doing so she'd built a life worth living. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Evelyn sat at her small desk and pulled out the journal she'd started keeping earlier in the year. She wanted to remember this feeling, this moment when everything had finally come together. She wrote about finding Thomas in the snow, about Robert's unexpected offer, about the struggles at work and the triumph of overcoming them, about watching Emma flourish when worry wasn't weighing them both down. And she wrote about kindness, about how a single act of compassion, even when you had almost nothing to give, could change everything. Not just for the person you helped, but for yourself. She'd helped Thomas find his way home, and in doing so she'd found her own way forward. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in white, but inside, Evelyn was warm, safe, hopeful. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And it had all started with a choice to not walk past a crying child in the snow, even when she had every reason to keep moving. That choice had opened a door, and Evelyn had been brave enough to walk through it. The next morning, Evelyn received an email from Riverside Community College. They'd heard about the Sullivan Scholarship Fund, word traveled fast in the small community college network, and they wanted her to speak to their current business students about her journey. About going from student to success, about overcoming obstacles, about never giving up on your dreams even when the world seems determined to crush them. As she read the invitation, she smiled. Another chance to help someone else find their way. She hit reply and typed, "I would be honored. Thank you for thinking of me, because that's what you do when doors open, you walk through them, and then you hold them open for the people coming behind you." 3 days later, on a crisp Saturday morning in mid-December, Evelyn stood in front of 30 business students at Riverside Community College. She recognized the look in their eyes, the hope mixed with doubt, the determination mixed with fear, the hunger for something better mixed with the certainty that people like them didn't get those chances. She'd worn one of her professional outfits, but she brought photos too, pictures of her old apartment with its water-stained ceiling, pictures of her old car with its duct-taped bumper, pictures of herself in her hospital laundry uniform at 3 in the morning. "I want to start by being completely honest with you," she began. "A year ago I was exactly where many of you are right now. I had a degree from this very college. I had worked hard, studied hard, done everything right, and I was working 2 minimum wage jobs just to keep a roof over my daughter's head." She saw recognition flash across several faces. "The world told me that my degree didn't matter because I didn't have the right connections or the right background or the right clothes for interviews. The world told me to give up on the dreams I'd had and settle for whatever work I could get, and for a long time, I believed it." She clicked to the next slide, a photo of herself now, in her office at Mitchell Financial Services. "But then something happened. I made a choice to help someone when I didn't have to. And that choice opened a door I never expected, a door to the career I'd always wanted but thought was impossible for someone like me." She spent the next 45 minutes sharing her story, the struggles, the rejection, the moment she'd almost given up, and the kindness that had changed everything. She was honest about the hard parts, about Daniel's sabotage and Jennifer's subtle cruelty, about working twice as hard to prove herself, about the fear that someone would realize she didn't belong and take it all away. But she was also honest about the triumph, about proving herself, about discovering that she was good at what she did, that she deserved to be there, that she could build a future for herself and her daughter. When she finished, hands shot up immediately. "How did you know Mr. Mitchell's offer was real and not some kind of scam?" asked a young woman in the front row. "I didn't, not for sure," Evelyn admitted, "but I also knew that if I didn't take the chance, I'd regret it forever. Sometimes you have to be willing to risk disappointment to get to something better." "What if we apply for jobs and never hear back?" asked a young man near the window. "I've sent out like 50 applications and gotten nothing." "I know that feeling," Evelyn said. "I lived it for years. Here's what I learned. Sometimes it only takes one yes, one person who sees your potential instead of your limitations, one opportunity that actually pans out. You keep applying, keep trying, and when that door opens, you run through it as fast as you can." "Did you ever feel like quitting?" asked another student. "Every single day for the first month," Evelyn said honestly. "I was terrified that I'd make a mistake and prove everyone's doubts right. But I also knew that my daughter was watching me. I wanted her to see that you don't give up when things get hard, you work harder." After the talk, several students approached her with questions. One young woman, tears in her eyes, said, "Thank you for being honest about how hard it was. Everyone always makes it sound easy if you just work hard enough. But it's not, is it?" "No," Evelyn said gently, "it's not. But it's possible. That's the important thing to remember. It's hard, but it's possible." As she drove home that afternoon, Evelyn thought about those students, about the hope in their eyes mixed with skepticism born from disappointment. She remembered being exactly where they were, believing the world was rigged against people like her. The world was rigged in many ways. She wouldn't lie about that, but sometimes, not always, not even often, but sometimes, kindness broke through the rigging. Sometimes a door opened, sometimes you got a chance, and when that happened you had to be ready. You had to be willing to work harder than you'd ever worked before. You had to be willing to prove yourself again and again. You had to be willing to face doubt and criticism and sabotage and keep going anyway. But it was worth it. God, it was worth it. When she got home, Emma was at the kitchen table working on a drawing for the district art competition. It was a portrait of Evelyn in her office, viewed through the window with snow falling outside. "What do you think?" Emma asked nervously. Evelyn looked at the drawing, at the careful detail Emma had put into every line, at the way she'd captured not just what Evelyn looked like, but how she felt, proud, confident, finally at peace. "I think it's beautiful, baby. I think you're going to win." Emma beamed. "Mrs. Anderson says the winner gets a $50 gift certificate to the art supply store and their picture in the newspaper. Then we'll buy a copy of that newspaper and frame it," Evelyn promised. That night, Evelyn received an email from Robert. The subject line read, "Scholarship Fund Update." She opened it to find that the Sullivan Scholarship Fund had received a major donation from one of the firm's longtime clients, enough to fund 5 full scholarships instead of 3. The donor had specifically mentioned being moved by Evelyn's story. The client's daughter had graduated from community college and struggled to find work in her field, and the story had resonated deeply. "You're making a difference," Robert's email concluded. "Not just for the students who will receive these scholarships, but for everyone who hears your story and realizes that second chances are possible. Thank you for being willing to share it." Evelyn sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by the ripple effect of that one December day a year ago. She'd stopped to help a crying child in the snow. That had led to a job opportunity, that had led to proving herself and succeeding, that had led to inspiring others and creating opportunities for students who needed them. All because she'd chosen kindness when she had almost nothing to give. She thought about writing back to Robert, thanking him again for taking a chance on her. But she'd already thanked him a dozen times, and she knew what he'd say, that she'd earned everything she'd achieved, that he'd simply opened a door, and she'd done the rest. Instead, she opened a new document and began to write. Not a journal entry this time, but a letter. A letter to her younger self, the woman who'd been so tired and scared and certain that nothing would ever get better. "Dear Evelyn," she wrote, "I know you're exhausted. I know you're scared. I know you think you'll be stuck in this place forever, working jobs that drain you for wages that never stretch far enough, watching your dreams slip further and further away. I know you wonder if you made a mistake going to college, if you wasted time and money on a degree that no one cares about because you don't have the right connections or background. I know you wonder if you should just give up and accept that this is all your life will ever be. But I'm writing to tell you something important. Don't give up. Keep going. Keep trying. Keep being the kind of person who helps a crying child in the snow, even when you have nothing to gain from it. Because that kindness you show, even when you're at your lowest, even when you have almost nothing to give, that kindness will come back to you in ways you can't imagine. It will open doors you didn't know existed. It will change your life and your daughter's life, and the lives of people you haven't even met yet. The road ahead is hard. You'll face people who underestimate you and try to sabotage you. You'll have moments of doubt where you wonder if you belong. You'll be tired and scared and uncertain, but you'll also discover that you're stronger than you know, that you're capable of more than you believe, that the degree you worked so hard for actually means something, and the skills you developed are valuable, and you deserve every opportunity you earn. A year from now, you'll have your own office. You'll be mentoring junior accountants. You'll have a scholarship fund named after you. You'll be speaking to students who look at you and see proof that it's possible to overcome the obstacles in front of them. Emma will have her own bedroom in a safe neighborhood. She'll be taking art classes. She'll be happy and thriving and proud of her mother. You'll be happy too, not because life is perfect, but because you'll know that you built something real through your own hard work and determination. You'll know that you didn't give up, even when it would have been easier to do so. So keep going, Evelyn. Keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep being kind. Your future self is waiting for you, and I promise it's worth the journey. With love and pride, Evelyn. She saved the letter, knowing she'd never send it because that wasn't how time worked. But writing it helped her remember how far she'd come, helped her stay grateful for every step of the journey. The snow continued to fall outside, silent and steady, transforming the world into something clean and new. Evelyn thought about Thomas, safe at home with his parents, probably asleep by now. She thought about Emma,
dreaming in her own bedroom, surrounded by art supplies and books, and all the security Evelyn had fought so hard to provide. She thought about the students she'd spoken to that morning, carrying home her story along with their doubts and dreams. She thought about the scholarship recipients who would benefit from the fund, students who would get chances they might not have received otherwise. And she thought about herself, a woman who'd been beaten down by life and circumstances, who'd almost given up, who'd been surviving, instead of thriving, but who'd made one choice that changed everything. A choice to help, a choice to try, a choice to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. That choice had led her here, to this moment, to this life, to a place where she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. She was building, she was helping others find their way, just as someone had helped her find hers. The snow fell, and Evelyn smiled, and in the warmth of her home, surrounded by evidence of how far she'd come, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope, pure, unshakable hope for the future. And the certain knowledge that kindness, even the smallest act of compassion, could change the world, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one snowy December evening at a time.